Hello, we're John and Elizabeth. We're on board Corrick. Behind us is Studland Bay. Ahead of us is the Needles Channel, and we're very nearly back.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
It's been an exciting morning involving an unexpected swim and a tow, but we'll talk about that next week when we've got it all together. It's been a busy old week this week. We started off in Dartmouth and we've made our way slowly to the entrance to the Solent. Not a huge number of miles, but the weather has been it's up and down. Sometimes it's been like this, absolutely lovely, and sometimes it's been blowing old boots, and so we've been making plans around that, and we've had a couple of radical changes of plan, including deciding we were going to sit it out in one place and then going to another place and sitting it out, but it's all good, and so we are just making our way gently towards the Solent. We've got enormous spring tide underneath us, making good speed. As I said last week, Dartmouth is well endowed with visitors' moorings, and this one up at Dittisham was just lovely. There's the ferry boat inn, which was great, and we went for a nice stroll in Dittisham and could see the boat from there, and also visited Agatha Christie's house. This is the boathouse associated with that, and fair bit of wildlife. So there's a seal lazing on Anchor Rock. For those of you who don't know, Dittisham is right up at the top of the Dart, and down at the bottom is Kingswear, and we were offered a very nice berth, really nicely tucked in out of the breeze. Crossing Lyme Bay is always a little bit tricky. Everything appears to be all at one side. You know, you've got Dartmouth, Brixham, Torquay, Weymouth way on the other side, and I'd never been to Exmouth, so we decided that we would have a pop at that. It has been a very lovely little sail, so we're now heading almost due north up towards the entrance to Exmouth. Fairly late decision, decided we're probably going to go here and sit out the next storm, but you wouldn't believe there was a storm on its way when you look at this. Overdressed and under canvas. Is that the story of this trip?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the wind is dropping right off as we head further north, and I'm nervous we're going to be just ever so slightly later than I hoped. There we go. It shouldn't change the price of fish too much.
Oh, the water's chilling. It's like slate grey.
Yeah, it's a lovely sort of green. Right, a bit of breeze, that's all we need.
Okay, picking up.
On paper, Exmouth looked like a good place to see out the storm. There's a closed-in harbour, sheltered from the southwest, and we made our way up. There isn't a lot of water in the channel, so we came in pretty much at high water, and that was handy because it meant we got to the entrance to the harbour at slack water, and I was able to line myself up, have a look at it, make sure that there was no flow across the entrance before making the approach. Even though the winds were relatively light, it was still fairly rolly, but as soon as you get into the gap itself, then everything calms down. Quite a lot of ferries and fishing boats use the entrance as a place to load up with passengers as well, but once we were in the gap, was able to slow down. I wasn't sure what to expect because I'd never been here before, and as we came in through the gap, I just got the sense it was all a little bit more constrained than I had expected. Fortunately, the harbour master had come down, and you can see him just there on the port side, indicating the berth that he wanted us to go onto. But that meant doing a fairly tight turn. So very glad that we practiced this the other day, but got in, found myself with the most amount of water, helm hard over, get the boat turning, put the boat into a stern, and the prop walk then spins you right round. The wind was blowing down through the gap as well, so that was setting me further into the marina, which would be fine because it would allow me to line up nicely on the jetty. But we managed to turn nicely at rest here. A little bit of going gently backwards, just in order to give myself a decent run up at the berth itself. Not too difficult once we'd got ourselves turned, because I knew I could always then hold myself against the wind if I needed it. There's a little motorboat on our starboard quarter there, but once I'd got enough room to have a little bit of a run at it, a tiny bit of a head power, and we then drove into the berth, and the gentleman on the dock took our lines, which was very handy. Exmouth itself, this built-up marina area, looks a bit like Hythe in many regards. Saw some photographs of it in a cafe the day after, and in 1984 this was all industrial, no residential at all. Quite a transformation in 40 years. But we got alongside, parked ourselves up there, all very pleasant indeed.
Not yet, Elizabeth. You won't quite make it. Hey! Right, I've got to come back a bit. I'm just going to put a little burst ahead on. Bow out. Step ashore, Elizabeth.
And this is the view of the harbour from the dockside itself. We're about the only sailing boat in at this point, and there is the gap with a reasonably large ferry in it.
We've had a fairly radical change of plan. We'd come into Exmouth and really enjoyed it. Lovely stroll round, lovely place. But as you might be able to see, we're a bit exposed coming in this way from the southwest. It is due to blow from the southwest, and although there should be about 1.8 meters of water here, it looks like it's about 1.3, maybe 1.2. Now the surge that we're getting only happens at the higher water, but at the same time there's a bit of me that doesn't want to be sitting in the mud in a swell in here. And fortunately the weather that we'd come in here to avoid appears to have gone a little bit later, so we're going to make a mad dash for Portland. 40 miles to go. We want to be there at about 3 o'clock in the morning to pick up the tide going round, so we want to actually go reasonably slowly. We want to do about 4 knots to do the 40 miles from here to Portland. It's about 5 o'clock when we leave. So we should have a nice leisurely sail. Hopefully the wind won't die, and hopefully the wind won't head us, and we'll arrive at Portland at 3 in the morning, bear away, and head into an anchorage either in Portland or in Weymouth until such time as we decide to go into Weymouth itself.
We didn't want to leave when there were too many ferries there, but we did want to get away, so we asked them to lift the bridge, and we got going. The bridge didn't lift quite as quickly as I expected, so got maybe a little bit closer than I would have liked, but nothing touched, so we were fine in the end, but I had to slow right down. The bridge lifted, as I say, very much slower than I expected, and there was a ferry just at the very far end, or a little tour boat, but we got out pretty much at the time that we hoped.
That was a bit tighter than I had thought it might be, sorry.
That's all good. Stuart line is moving, so hopefully he won't move anyway too much.
You reckon he's just going to go? Loads of people out, Elizabeth. Look at them all. Sorry? Okay, you...
Perversely, we didn't really want a fast passage, so this is Elizabeth going on watch, which is fine. We planned to be at Portland in order to take advantage of the tidal stream round the corner. We needed to be a little bit north of the line because as you approach it's going south, and then as you get to it, it starts to go east. And as you come around the corner, it's a funny old angle, and you do get very close to this light indeed. But the next morning we left Portland, headed in towards Weymouth. Yeah. I don't know if Weymouth were expecting a lot more people than turned up, but we got allocated a berth and we were put in the cove, which I was very happy about, but we got put onto another boat, and so we made our approach, despite the fact that the place didn't appear very busy, and just gently made our way in alongside this boat here, the white-hulled one, but we were rafted up despite the fact that there was acres of jetty space available, and this boat was a little bit smaller than us, so I called up and asked if that's actually what they wanted to do. It turned out there'd been some sort of mistake. They thought this boat was bigger than original, than it actually was, so I wasn't keen to stay here, but once we got alongside, as I say, I called them up on VHF and said, "Are you really sure?" And they then asked us to go to a different berth.
Just through there fairly.
So we got allocated a berth a bit closer to the harbour entrance, and that was also fine. Nice to see the gigs out rowing in the harbour itself, but as you can see from this shot here, there was no shortage of parking space, so I've got no idea why they rafted us up. They told us that they were expecting somebody to raft onto us later on the evening, but nobody appeared, so I'm wondering if a whole pile of people had said they were coming to Weymouth and then didn't because of the weather.
Forward, Elizabeth.
Weymouth itself's a very pretty place, and we enjoyed our couple of days parked up.
It's drawing towards the end of quite a long day. We had a leisurely start this morning.
Too leisurely.
Too leisurely.
And we have paid for it.
We've paid for it because it's been a slow trip. We were punching quite a lot of spring tide all the way across the bay.
Very uncomfortable.
Wanted to stay reasonably clear of St Albans Ledge. Didn't quite manage that. It got very bouncy. Ended up steering off. But We are rounding the headland now, and we will be heading into Studland Bay. Ideally pick up a mooring there before we re-enter the Solent.
Yes. It's
And
all
we-
a bit,
It's all getting a bit adjacent.
yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But we spied the needles. So,
We have, yeah.
yeah.
Right. Better pay attention to this. Hour or so before we're on a buoy, I hope. Good.
We hadn't been to Studland for ages, and it is spectacularly beautiful. And as the moon came up, it went very still. Well, we're very nearly at the end of our 6-month adventure. We'll do a final episode and give the results of the beauty competition about places, and talk a little bit about the
Pros and cons, really.
the pros and cons, what went well, what didn't go so well, and a little bit of the numbers. So how much it cost, how much we spent, how much time we spent away, how many nights we were at anchor, that sort of thing. Yeah, I've got to do some number crunching yet. Thank you very much for watching.